Welcome to Playful Beginnings, a podcast about the magic of play therapy for therapists, students, and anyone interested. In our podcast, we'll explore the deeper understanding of play therapy and the skills we use when working with children.
We hope to help you understand the why behind what we do and how it helps kids heal and grow. I'm Dr. Kristie Oviola, a working play university professor in North Carolina.
I'm Dr. Maggie Parker, a play therapist and professor in DC. Hello, Kristie.
Hey, Maggie.
How are you doing?
I am chugging along. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, you are in the midst of a move and a new home and trying to figure out all of the
new
things.
System of university. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
It's a lot. And I am not okay with how I'm not ready for, I need a pause button. I have too much stuff that I need to do to get all of this stuff. And I bet people are feeling that way. Our listeners are feeling that way too.
I do want to say, I think did you get the new IJPT?
Oh yeah, we've been posting all about it.
Yeah, that some of our authors were, or some of our guests were authors in this edition. So like Jenna Taylor that we've had on recently, her meta-analysis on internalizing behaviors was in there. She published that with D. Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one was
Kristie Perryman on CCPT in a trauma-informed school.
Yep.
And then Amy Work.
And Amy Works
on parent consultations.
Yeah, conceptual article.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, her research article. It's her research. It's her research article.
Qualitative. Yeah, it was a qualitative.
Yeah, it was a qualitative study.
Mm-hmm. And it was fun to read it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun to read it because it was a lot of what she found kind of reiterated what you and I have talked about on the podcast, and also what Dr. Ahu Line has talked about, which I think is really cool, that it's like, okay, so we're kind of part of this community, and what we're saying aligns with what the research says. And I think that that's something that's really important that I've been really trying to reiterate within some of these community spaces that we're at is the importance of research, and what does it mean to have an evidence base, and the importance of like utilizing the protocol and knowing what it is that you're doing and how it aligns. Because I think sometimes we act like, we'll say like, oh, I'm using evidence-based, I'm, doing CCPT and CBT. And it's like, okay, those are two evidence-based things separately.
But they're not evidence-based together.
And I think that's really important. And that's some of the myths that we're trying to bust in some of these community spaces as well. It's like, and so the manual is based off of D. Ray's Advanced Play Therapy book. That is, anytime you look at research that says that child-centered play therapy and that they had fidelity checks, that means that they're looking off of that manual and they're checking to see if they're aligning with that. And so I think that's important that people know.
Yeah. And I'm guessing too, if you're mixing two evidence-based modalities, that's got to be confusing for kids, because
they're so different.
CBPT and sorry, I have to get the acronym right in my head, and approach how you are in the room is so different. And so that's got to be a little bit of like head spin for the kiddos that you're working with, because they're like, hey, who's here now? And what has switched? And unless someone is going to do some studies around the combination integration of those theoretical approaches, then I think that's harder to say that is evidence-based.
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me, I don't know if you saw this in class, but one of our friends when we were in school did a lot of CCPT or CBRT with their daughter. And they were always like very non-directive in CCPT. And then one session, just to see what would happen, she was like, go play with this, go do this, go do that. And their child ended up leaving the room in tears, I think, was so angry because it was like, this is not. And so it was it was sad to watch, right? But also like such an important lesson to recognize that like, this is very confusing if you're going to go from one way of being to another way of being, and how discombobulating that can be for children and how important it is to be transparent in those moments. Like if you're going to change, whether like you're going from a directive to non-directive or non-directive to directive, then you need to have that conversation with the child.
Yeah, I would agree. From a child center, we want to make sure you're well informed of like why we do this, the purpose of it, how it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a goal to it, right? How it aids the child towards healing and growth and living to their greatest potential.
Right. And it made me question myself too, right? Like, I know that like when I make a Psychology Today website, I put person-centered, humanistic, child-centered, right? Like, or child-parent relationship there. Right? I don't put any of the others because I'm not those. And so I think I see a lot of times that people, I'm CBT and DBT and blah, blah, and it's like, wait, hold on. So what does that really
And
mean?
I think some of those can work together.
Align. CBT and DBT
Challenge.
do go together.
Yeah, one is the second phase of another one, right? Or the third
Right.
wave of another one. But CBT and child centered don't
Right. Don't.
necessarily,
Yeah.
they kind of counter and
Yeah.
indicate each other at some point in phase of
Yeah.
therapy. I was also going to just say, like when I said contraindicate it, right? Like they don't combine well or they're not well they're hard to integrate together. There are reasons for that. And so I just want to highlight three quick ones.
Yeah.
One is that the goals of those therapies may conflict with each other. So like when we say cognitive behavioral play therapy and CCPT conflict with each other, what we're saying is CBPT is really helping you look at logic, where person-centered is wanting you to look more at raw emotional feelings or like connect on that side, right? So when I look at person-centered and I look at CBT, those are the contraindications that CBT is saying, like the point of that you're going to address a conflict is through cognition, where in CCPT, it's about relationship and feeling, right? So they're opposite of each other. And although CBT may talk about feelings, they really want you to go in logically, where person-centered, that's not where we want you to go in. That will come up, but that's not really a goal that we're like seeking to change someone's logic. The other thing is it is confusing for the client because they're unsure of what to do. Also, how are you going to show up each day? So when we speak particularly about play therapy, if I'm allowing you to be the one directing and then all of a sudden I'm taking direction, the kid is kind of like, wait, what? I thought I was in control. You said I got to choose. And now you're saying I don't get to choose. Is this truthful from you or not truthful? So the next time you come in and say you get to choose, they're going to be like, is that really true? Or are you going to take control here in a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that could feel punitive to them in the session.
Would hard
And
trust.
yeah. And then the last thing is actually the two things can cancel out progress for the other. So as we start to like conceptualize progress in one and then we take another approach, it may cancel out the progress that we were already seeing.
Right.
Because now we're conflicting. This is why
Right.
we don't encourage clients to have two therapists.
Yeah.
Right? It's because that can conflict and like change the structure and the goals and the direction of the client and like what to focus on. And those two things may clash instead of mix well together. So that's kind of what I meant by contraindicate it.
Well, and I think also when thinking about the two theories and how they are
Mm-hmm.
is that one, child-centered, has a belief system in the child's innate capacity and that we don't need to direct or teach.
Yep.
And I think often CBT is very much about like, this is an opportunity for you to learn and for me to teach kind of how these things interrelate. And I'm not saying like one's better or worse, one's better for me.
Yeah.
Right.
You align closer with one than the other.
Yes. I don't do good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a good CBT person. I'm not good at it. I'm also not good at it when I go for my own therapy. I'm like, I know what you're doing. I see it. Don't know. I already know. I already can make an anxious journal. I have one written and printed in my brain.
Right.
So I think
I don't want us to sound like we're picking on CBT
I think
it's just CBT. I think what Maggie is saying, right, like each approach takes their own way of how to do the therapy. And what you need to make sure you're aware of is like, what are those approaches? And
Right.
those that do combine well often target the same thing. That's
Right.
why DBT and CBT work well together sometimes, is because they're both going after logic. And so
Mhm.
they're easier to integrate than CBT and person centered.
And I think like I do want to be very clear. Like, I'm not here to neither of us are here to try and pick on CBT. I think
No,
CBT is
no,
easy to identify because it is so well known
no.
and it is so kind of visual. It's kind of the standard of care, right? It has the most evidence base surrounding it. If you go to a pediatric, well, I mean, insurance companies love CBT.
Yeah.
Insurance companies are going to pump things out about CBT. Pediatricians are going to, like, majority of people are like, standard of care is CBT, right? And even if you look, if we're really honest about when we look at like evidence-based practice, that is like, I think it says evidence-based and ours is promising, right? So there is some little bit of distinction. And that also means that you have to do CBT to fidelity,
Yeah, you
right?
have to follow the manual.
You're following the manual, which I don't think we always do. And it's also a belief system.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to kind of identify CBT also because I think it's fundamentally different. But like, I would love if we also had a conversation with, Eliana Gill on her approach, or
Mhm.
Dr. Delina Dillman Taylor on Adlarian, or if Kristen Meany Wallen or or Terry Cotman. I mean, so we're all going to be different, right? And I'm not here to say who's better or worse. It's just that it doesn't work for me. But
But I do think it's helpful for us to be thoughtful of those components of, the idea of what does it mean to integrate and why does that work or does not work well with CCPT? Because there is a reason you'll hear us say we don't integrate often, if at all. And Maggie, why is that? What
we
does
don't have.
Roger say?
Oh no, I don't know. I'm not a good student.
Yes,
What?
you do. Roger says that the conditions, those six core conditions, are necessary and
Oh, yeah.
sufficient,
The relationship is
right?
both
You know this.
necessary and sufficient. Yes.
Yes. And so that's why you don't hear us talking a
Yes.
lot about integration within this theoretical approach, is because if you really believe in CCPT, you believe this approach is necessary. And so does every other theory. Just so you guys know,
Yeah.
all the other theories also believe those core conditions are necessary. But what they don't believe is that it's sufficient.
Right.
And that is the switch from um, that really stands CCPT out from the other approaches, that we
Except,
believe the relationship is the true healing factor.
yes. But yeah, and thinking about like just I think when we're looking at what does it mean to be child-centered, I think a lot of people, I think that can mean different things for different people. And there are a lot of people who train CCBT differently, but I think it really is, if we're looking at it specifically from this evidence base, it's like, how are we using that protocol within our sessions? And how are we using these skills and these underlying
Mhm.
belief systems um, within these spaces?
Yeah. I think as a clinician too, I'm sitting here wondering for the clinician what switched for the need to move to a different modality. I just have a lot of curiosity about why the switch.
Yeah.
Does it feel like CCPT is you need more than CCPT, and therefore you're switching because CCPT doesn't feel enough in that moment? And if that's the case, I get it, but then are you really doing CCPT? Because I think those of us that are child-centered clinicians have the framework that this is enough. And yes, there are moments, and I would not, I want to be honest, there's times I question it in session, but it doesn't mean I jump ship and switch theories. I still stay with CCPT. I don't throw anything else in there because I do believe this is enough. And sometimes that's more of what's happening in me than it is with the child. Or it could be, and I don't know if you have found this, Maggie. I know I sometimes have felt this in session, that sometimes I feel like it's Groundhog's Day in session,
Mm-hmm.
where it feels like repeating the same session over and over and over again. And I remember getting supervision on this when I was in the both the master's and the doctoral program, just to say like, and really what it was is that like my need for things to move quicker than they were moving was like interfering with my ability to be fully present in the session, fully present with the child in the session of where they are and addressing what my need is in that moment, or potentially a need of someone else that's being like, projected onto me. So maybe a parent has a need or a teacher has a need that they're wanting something to change quickly for this child. And with a deeper look, things were changing with that child. They just weren't changing as quickly as maybe adults in those environments wanted them to change.
Yeah. I think it's like hard to decipher. I think I've heard from
Mhm.
a lot of the feedback that I'm getting is people hearing these things from supervisors. And if you're new in the field and you have a supervisor who's saying it doesn't work or you need to, then I think that being child-centered, and I think what I hope that our listeners have recognized is that it is a dynamic, evolving personal exploration and professional involvement. It's so much more. I know I just like said like the manual, right? But it's so much more than the manual because it's a belief and understanding in the relationship, and like the manual is just a way to quantify a little bit of that, for like a different purpose. But it's so dynamic and
Mhm.
personal, and it's like it's a belief system.
It is. It definitely is. And I just want to review what those beliefs are,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like this idea of play is children's most natural language. And so we want to give them lots of opportunities to play in session and be able to express their experience, thoughts, and complex feelings through toys and materials that can act as symbols rather than needing verbal communication. So that's foundations.
Mhm.
The second one is the inherent wisdom of the child, and that they do understand their struggles and they possess the inner ability and drive towards growth and healing. Right. So that's that actualizing tendency in your kiddo.
Mhm.
And then the next one is the trust that we have in kids to be able to direct the therapeutic process instead of it being adult led, right? Which would be to redirect, to ask questions, to interpret. That undermines the child's autonomy in the moment. And what we're really wanting is kids to have autonomy in the play session.
Mhm.
Another one of our core values, right, is the idea that the relationship between you and the child being consistent, predictable, genuine, safe is going to be the healing factor within the therapy. And then we get into the core conditions of person centered in CCPT, which are unconditional positive regard and acceptance of the child, empathic understanding, and then our own congruence and knowing what belongs to us and what belongs to the kiddos. And then lastly, what I would say is this idea of process over outcome. So it's really the ability to allow the child the space and the time to process what's happening, which may feel repetitive, right?
Yeah.
Because kids, as they're problem solving, they may need to problem solve several times the same way, different ways, alternatives, right? But giving them time to like really play that out can be really helpful. Did I miss any, Maggie?
No, I think like, it's you're so good at remembering all of them. I just kind of mine is, I guess, more, I don't know what to call it, but like just like kind of, yeah, it's like the belief system and the child's capacity, and that my role is to foster a relationship where this child feels seen and understood and valued for all of the things that they are, and to allow or create a space, or attempt to create a space where this child can explore aspects of themselves that they may not have felt safe to do in other spaces, or to process their experience in this space. And so like, that's where I'm like working really hard, and that I'm trying to facilitate that or create that by the use of those skills and by the use of myself, which I think is even harder. Like, how do you quantify that I'm being genuine? How do you quantify that you're being authentic, or that you have unconditional positive regard? I don't think that's really hard, but like, yeah, just trying to just that belief and trust. And I always think about the quote, I say it all of the time, but if I accept you for who you are, I give you permission to change. And how often I think we view as adults somehow that children are not capable, and we expect things of children that we don't expect from adults, which is odd to me. And I use the example in class all the time of like, I'm from Dallas, Texas, love Dallas, grew up in Dallas. But if I go back to Dallas and everyone's like, hey, how are you? I'm not going to be like, well, I'm probably not going to tell the truth because I don't have that trusted relationship with them. Whereas like, if you were to ask me how I am, I can tell you the truth. I can be authentic and genuine because I know that we have that relationship and you accept me. And so people aren't like talk about the things that are really happening in their lives if they don't have a trusted person. And they're definitely not going to do that if we like tell them like, well, what did you do wrong? What could you have done differently? Well, I'm never going to talk to that person again.
Yeah. I also, as you were sharing that, Maggie, I was also thinking about, right, like from your quote, I can only feel safe enough to make changes when, right, I'm
Mhm.
in a relationship that fully accepts me.
Yeah.
And from a CCPT perspective, my goal is not to change the child,
No.
right? It's to
No.
unleash their inner potential and to allow them to move to self-enhancing ways of being is really my key goal in that. And that may mean change for the child. And it may mean more understanding from me to understand why the child responds in the way that they do. And so that was the only thing I
Mhm.
think. And I love that quote because I really do believe that a child won't won't feel safe enough to change if they feel like the person that they're in relationship needs them to be different,
Mhm.
which is I think that what that quote, the underlying purpose of that quote is, right? And I don't need a child to be different
No.
and I'm in a relationship with them.
No.
Yeah.
It just makes me, yeah. I think you and I think, yeah, I'm trying to kind of figure out how to phrase this, right? Because it's something that
Yeah.
is so meaningful for you and I, and it's so meaningful for so many people that we know. And it's a relatively like small and tight knit community. And so I think it is hard when I hear these things or I hear of like students being told these things that like it's not enough or it's not evidence based or you can't, you have to add, it's hard, it's disheartening. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you and I wanted to do this is because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there on play therapy in general and child-centered play therapy and what it is and what it means.
Well, and I think, we're in the unique position, Maggie, as being university faculty where we are training students or interfacing with the public through conferences and other things that are individual institutions that we're hearing the
Right.
misinformation regularly or the misinterpretation of
Yes.
something that's out there. And so you hear that enough and really why this podcast got started because Maggie and I were like, we need something out there that like counters what people are hearing because just some information that was getting shared with us in separate locations at separate times in separate places. We were like, that's not. And we did our research. We went back, we reread because I was like, help me know if I'm misinterpreting this. And then,
Yeah.
I went back to Art of the Relationship. Look, Maggie said, let me look at Advanced Play Therapy. Let me look at Cochrane's book. Let me look at, I was looking at
Yeah.
multiple resources to figure out, am I the one who misinterpreted or is this getting misinterpreted to the public?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, when we misinterpret it to the public or, seeing kids and they think they're getting CCPT play therapy services and they're getting something slightly different. The
Hmm.
next therapist that comes in that wants to do CCPT, it's harder because they're now having to overcome the misinterpretation of things in the field. And so, or parents aren't even willing to try CCPT again. And it may not be the right approach for every kid, but if it's not being done to fidelity, then there's a problem because then we don't know if it's the right approach or the
Yeah.
wrong approach for kids. And I think that's really why I know in my heart, that's why I wanted to do this podcast because I wanted a place where people could come to get solid, good information.
Mhm. Yeah, all of those things.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm. I got tired all of a sudden.
I know. Wore ourselves out.
We were so passionate. It really like came on strong. We were like, well, for all of our listeners, thank you. As
Yeah.
always, please download, subscribe, follow. That really helps us as we're kind of like figuring out what all of this stuff is. And we appreciate your kind of riding along on this journey with us. But let us know what you're interested in, and hopefully we'll start getting some video questions in to our mailboxes so we can start answering your questions.
Yes, please either emailed questions or if you want to send us a video, we would love to put them on and have like Q&A session. Or maybe we need to do a live session. All right, y'all have a wonderful day. We can't wait to see you next week.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
And we appreciate your kind of riding along on this journey with us.
Yes.
As I'm trying out all sorts of social media things and trying to figure out what that means. And you're welcome to email us at info@playtherapyspace.com.